Good morning everybody, how are you guys going? Today we got quite an exciting one, mainly for the GTI because as you guys saw in the previous video, we drove 8.5 hours back and forth to get this new motor for it, and I can't wait to see how good this thing actually is. So let's get it onto an engine stand and tear this thing down. Well, not even 5 minutes into our little journey, I've managed to round out some bolts. Prior, I'm guessing somebody torqued these down a bit too much, and yeah, it's just the threads. So I've threaded these bolts, and because I know that I'm never going to be using it again, I'm just drilling them out. So that's great. And there's our second one. So should be able to pry this away now. Cool. Now that that's off, that clutch is definitely toast. Look at that. Look how thin that thing is. Jesus. Alright, yeah. Somebody definitely fried that clutch or burnt it way too much. That's horrid. Anyways, now we need to take these 6 bolts off, and then we can take our flywheel off. Well, that's off. I'm never going to be using this flywheel again. So these are dual mass flywheels, so there's like a twin plate in it to help solve some vibration, I guess. But yeah, I'm going to be putting the single mass from the other GTI engine into this one, so there's that, I guess. Okay, so for starters, I'm going to go ahead and take this metal zip tie off that holds these heater core hoses and the wastegate hose on. And then we can sort of set this aside, move these hoses out of the way, and then we can take our turbo inlet pipe off so we can inspect the condition of our turbo, and then we can go ahead and maybe take off the exhaust manifold and this outlet pipe as well. And then that way we can have a nice open area so we can clean this thing off. Alrighty, inlet pipe coming off. This thing is definitely toast. Quite a lot of oil around it. Alrighty, just set that out of the way. Okay, so now that we've taken our inlet pipe off, you can easily see the turbine. And if I reach back into the hot side of the turbo and move it around, you can definitely see there's quite a lot of side movement like that, and that is a sign of a worn bearing inside of it. If I spin it, it sort of catches. Still works, so I might be able to rebuild this turbo down the line, but it is only a KO3, so I'm not too worried. We'll definitely have to swap that out with the other turbo, or maybe the one that's off of the A3 60,000 kilometer motor. So we're going to start taking these heater core hoses off and really start stripping this thing down so we can actually clean it up and get around to doing some timing. Alright, that's junk. Now we have a nice exposed area. We can start unbuttoning this off, this turbo blanket. Alrighty, I'm going to take this mount off now. There we go. Might take this belt off as well. Definitely take this cover off though. Just get a little shifter and you can sort of just pry back on the tensioner and take the belt off. Nice and easy. This is actually pretty fresh, to be honest. There's not really any cracks in it either, so I might reuse that. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is go ahead and take off this inlet pipe, and then we can take off the heat shield, and that way all our exhaust bolts are now exposed, so we can take that off. I've also gone ahead and, as you saw before, we lined up our timing markings, so later on we can just take off all the timing and slap a new one on. But otherwise, yeah, just gonna start taking this inlet pipe off. Just quite a few 10 mils around in brackets, so let's just zip them off. Alright, this should be nice and loose now. We just need to take this 7mm hose off. It's the inlet pipe, or outlet pipe, sorry, off. You might recognize this on the S3. It more so goes kind of like this across the whole motor and down, whereas this sort of goes down and behind the whole motor. Big difference between that KO3 and KO4 setup. I'm going to go ahead and take this hose off too. There we go. Jesus Christ. Someone's put silicone around that so then it doesn't leak. It's sort of silicone-y but oily at the same time. I don't know. That's very weird. Okay, so now that we have all that off, we have a 13mm here and a 13mm here. We can just take off. So 13 here. That also holds that bracket up too. And there we go. Just a little heat shield over the turbo. I might go ahead and put these bolts back here so we don't lose them. Alright, so I'm just going to spray some penetrant onto these exhaust bolts because over time they tend to sort of heat up quite a lot because it's connected to a turbo, and these can snap. I haven't had ones yet snap. I've had these ones snap that connect to the downpipe, but there is a slight chance that that could happen, so I'd rather be safe than sorry. Now there's a banjo bolt that runs all the way through here, so I can't grab that yet until the exhaust manifold is taken off. We can leave the turbo on and just sort of slide the exhaust manifold off, and then we do the turbo. So now we're taking our turbo bolts off. They're 17s, and the one back here requires us to use a spanner because you can't quite fit a socket down there. But we got that one out now. I might just zip them off with a rattle gun actually. Take that one off. And this one. So we got both of our turbo bolts off now. And we can go ahead and start taking our manifold bolt off. We are going to go ahead and crack all these loose. There's that one. And then we got an Allen key over here. There we go. We can start cracking more of these bolts. Might have to get a smaller 12 to fit down there, but I'm going to at least break all these other 12 mils loose. Got quite a small one here, so hopefully I have enough leverage. There we go. Perfect. She's a bit squeaky. Alrighty, that's that one off. Alright, well I guess that's stuck there for now. I'm going to rattle all these other ones loose. Alrighty, so that is all of our bolts off now. Take this thing off. There we go. Exhaust manifold off. And grab my 12mm again. Looks like we probably had an exhaust leak. This one's cracked, so. But we'll have a look down the back of the valve though. Alrighty, so we've gotten our exhaust open up now, and you can see the back of the valves are sort of white-ish, and there's quite a lot of build-up inside of each one of them, especially the last one over here. See a lot of crusty sort of build-up, but otherwise everything looks pretty normal. It may have been running lean a little bit at some point. You see the back of the valve is kind of white, kind of grayish color, which means that at some point it could have been running a little bit lean, but otherwise it's pretty damn normal and it's okay. So we'll go ahead and plug up all these holes, and then we can sort of take this turbo off and get everything else sorted out. Okay, so now that we have our exhaust side taken off, we're going to go ahead and take the turbo off, and then we'll go ahead and start on the cold side with the intake and everything else on this side, and we'll also take off the rocker cover so we can have a look inside the motor and maybe take the spark plugs out, and then we'll go ahead and do timing. Now in the next video we will also be taking the engine and gearbox out of the GCI and swapping all the accessories, the turbo, intake and everything like that, and put it onto this motor, so then we can throw it back in and get the GCI started up again. So that's the plan. So let's keep stripping this motor down and have a look further inside it to investigate to see if this motor is actually worth putting into the GCI. Injectors off. Alrighty, well I was going to go ahead and replace out the oil cooler, but it turns out I don't have a new oil cooler seal for it, so I'll have to wait till a little bit later when I get a new seal and I'll replace that out. They tend to corrode out from the inside, and that starts leaking oil into the coolant, and we all know that those two don't really mix. So it's one of the first things I do, especially on the S3 and the GCI. They always do it, and I mean, it's a 20-year-old engine, so it's bound to happen. So if you have one, go ahead and replace it out. It's not too hard. I do have a video somewhere on the channel where I did it on the S3, so if you want to do it now, I'll leave the link up in below. Otherwise though, I'll show you guys what it looks like inside the intake ports, and then we'll go ahead and take off the rocker cover and have a look inside the motor. Everything's looking good so far though. Alrighty, well, all our intake ports are looking nice and clean. All of them are about the same as that one. So we're going to go ahead and start taking off the rocker cover so we can have a look inside the motor and see if it's all good in there. If so, then we can completely strip down this block, clean it down, do some timing, and then I think that's pretty much where we're going to leave it. So then we can get on to pulling the motor out of the GCI. Okay, so for starters, we're going to go ahead and take off this little hose, this PCV hose that is attached to the rocker cover. Okay, so we've moved the hose clamp out of the way. We can't quite take the hose off because of the tension that this creates. So we'll take it off when we get all the bolts and everything off the rocker cover, but let's go ahead and take off these coil packs. All right, now we can take all our coil packs out. They're looking all nice and clean too. There's no oil on them. And all our spark plug wells are nice and clean too. There's no oil in that, so it's looking promising. Now we'll just take this PCV hose off back here. I believe this is for the diverter valve, so we can just move that out of the way. There we go. I'll put the bolt back in there. And now we can start zipping off all the 10mm nuts on the rocker cover, holding it down. There we go. That's all our 10mm off. And now we just need to pry this off. So, Jesus. Someone used a lot of RTV on this. I don't know why they put so much RTV on it. I'm gonna push this thing up because me pulling on this is gonna end up on the ground. Pry it up against there. That seemed to work. Alrighty, I think that's free now. Go ahead and take our rocker cover off. There we go. That's off. And by the looks of it, this thing's looking damn clean. Not as brown as the one that was on my GTI. He's looking nice and clean too, but all these are looking nice light golden color, and there's no build-up of any crud inside the motor. I can see completely through it. That's really good. All our cams are looking nice and perfect. There's no grooves, there's no marks in them. Nice and smooth. You see all the engravings nicely. But yeah, main thing on my GTI was like it was just completely dirty and brown. There's a little bit of build-up here, but that's really nothing. This chain's a nice light color. I remember the one on my GTI was really dark brown when I took it off. So that's also a really good sign. Yeah, like all these cam caps are nice gold color, which means that the oil changes were done, you know, nice and early on this engine. There's no build-up inside all the bolts as well. I could just throw a socket in that. This is looking really promising, really nice. Only thing is though, when I pulled the rocker cover off just then, I broke the rocker cover seal, but I have a few of those, so that's no problem. But this in itself is looking really, really nice. I'm actually quite astounded by this, and I don't know if you guys know, but I bought this engine for 300 bucks. So for 200,000 kilometers, I know a lot of people want lower mileage engines, but looks like this thing has been looked after pretty damn well, considering the amount of kilometers that are on it. So I'm really, really happy with this, and I think this is going to be a great engine for the GTI. So let's throw the rocker cover back on, and then we're going to do some timing. Well, I've decided I'm not going to put the old rocker cover back on, and I actually have an AGN rocker cover. This is off of a NA 1.8T, and it allows us to actually use push down core packs instead of bolt down ones. So this is actually a lot nicer and smoother as well, and I enjoy the way these look. Eventually we'll actually take this off, completely sand it down and polish it chrome, but I think this looks a lot nicer than the factory rocker cover. Perfect. Well, to say the least, that is looking a whole lot better than the factory rocker cover. I will have to convert later down the track the 3-pin to a 4-pin so I can actually use push down coil packs, but that's nothing too hard. So I'll keep this on for now because I think this looks really, really good. And let's get onto doing some timing. So I've just put a mark onto the rocker cover, and yes, the markings actually do line up with the same 1.8T. This AGN was 20 valve 1.8 that was NA before they decided to strap a turbo onto it. But anyways, let's take off these covers and then we can slide off this timing belt. Alrighty, so we've turned our crank and lined up our timing markings here and our two up on the top as well. So we can go ahead and take off our crank. It's just 4 Allen key bolts here. Just hold on to the crank so you don't spin it while you're taking it off. Oh, damn, that's tight. I think I might just need to zap them off. Got to be really careful not to round these out, but like that. Damn it. Well, right as I was saying, I didn't want to strip these bolts because it's extremely common I decided to put a rattle gun on it, as you guys just saw, and strip the bolts. So I'm gonna have to need a new bolt for at least that one. I was able to break loose the other 3, and now I'm just trying to tap a Torx bit into it. I'm really hoping this works. If not, I'm going to have to weld a bolt into it and then break it loose. Hopefully this does the trick. I did put some anti-seize onto it, so let's see how this goes, I guess. It's going in crooked, which is quite annoying. All right, good timing. Harley's just pulled up, but we'll go ahead, if you can just hold on to that part there, and I'll try to crank it loose. Oh, it worked. Thank God. That actually worked. I'm pretty proud of that. I'll order some new ones, but let's get these other ones up now. And hopefully you don't round more bolts.
Mexico?
Alrighty, so we're gonna take these other 3 crank bolts off now. I'm just gonna do them all by hand now. I'm not gonna rattle anything off before I round every single bolt on this motor. And then take off these 2 covers, pull off the timing belt, throw the new one on.
Yeah.
All right, I know I said I wasn't gonna use the rattle gun, but I don't think I'm gonna round these off. It's all good. Take off the casings now. There we go. It's actually looking pretty dry in here. No weeping from the water pump. I think on the S3 block, there was a bit of a weep red stain down here. So this is looking quite good. So it's not an OEM water pump, so that's been replaced at some point. But yeah, we got some OEM replacements, new tensioner, water pump, roller, and everything like that. So we just got to unbolt this one, take this off, and then we can take the belt off. All right, so we have a Allen key size 8 in here for the tensioner. So we just take, oh Jesus. Jesus Christ, that boy's tight. A lot of things on this motor have definitely been touched, and they've either excessively put RTV on it or sealant, or excessively tightened it, so don't be that guy. I believe the new kit comes with a new one of these bolts, so, and there is a washer that goes in behind it. But now we have that off, we can take the roller off and the rest of the belt. Very nice, very good, I like that. Alrighty, and then we can take off our tensioner here and our water pump. Same bolts as before, so oh, they're just a bit smaller. I'll have to get a smaller one. Probably hear the next door neighbors doing some grinding. That's always great, I love that. Alright, and then we'll take off the bottom one. Alrighty, just 2 bolts. That's our tensioner. And then we're gonna take off our water pump. Oh, Jesus Christ. This is what I'm saying, bro. I'm like almost rounding these bolts off because someone's tightened them too much. Torque ratings, guys. You're gonna make your life so much easier. There we go. They've definitely used more sealer. This is what I'm saying, bro. Look at all the sealant on it. See that? You don't need all that. Look, you can see it bulging off of. No wonder why there's no leaks. They've used more sealant than they need to. All right, and then I'm gonna use a pry bar like this, and you can sort of get in behind the back of this. Just pry off the water pump like that. Very nice. But you see there's already an O-ring from factory on this, and they've just put more RTV. And now it's my job to clean off all this other crud off of it. It's actually not looking too bad though, but there's just a lot of leftover sealant in there. So we'll take all that off and scrape it off, and then we're gonna clean off the block, and then we can reinstall our new timing belt. So need to find a metal razor blade. This plastic razor blade isn't doing much. Metal razor blade acquired. I wanna try and get at least 98% of this RTV, if not all of it off, because it's not going to make a great mating surface for the new water pump. We'll also get some Scotch-Brite and just clean up the surface. Harley, you got some news for us for your car?
Finally got all my parts today.
So expect a video soon on Harley's BMW. Recently his rear subframe bushing mount, I guess you could call it, the shell for the bushing sort of cracked, and yeah, so we decided to get a new subframe for it, and he's ordered some new bushings, some new chassis mounts for it and everything like that, so we got to weld onto the chassis. So if that interests you, stay tuned for that. Otherwise though, all that is pretty much off. We'll get some Scotch Brite and just clean off the rest of the block, and then use some brake cleaner, and then we're sweet. There you go, coming off nicely. And then we'll sort of scrub off inside the area where the new seal is supposed to go up again. So a nice smooth surface for that seal is going to allow it to last and have a good surface to actually, you know, sit in. So I pretty much do this to all mine. Inside here is looking actually really nice. I remember on this block, on the GTI, there was a lot of corrosion and crud because, I don't know, somebody had it sitting for too long with just water in it, and they tend to rust from the inside out. So I guess another good reason to swap the motor out. I had a good feeling that we were just going to consistently just have more and more issues with that thing. So I will rebuild it and put it to use down the track. Anyways, that's done, so we'll just spray it out. Maybe grab a brush. Just cleaning it up nice in here because, I mean, once I put the timing belt on and put the casing back over, I won't be seeing this for a long time. Or at least not for another 100,000 kilometers. Very nice. Alrighty, now that we've used probably like $10 worth of brake cleaner and I'm high off of it, we're gonna put our new belt on. So, alrighty, so we have a new timing belt, a new tensioner as well in here, and most importantly, a new roller. So we'll throw this on, bolt it up, and then we'll double check all our timing markings again. That's all good. And the most important part, the water pump. I had to wait quite a long time for this, but as you can see, we got a nice new seal on here. And this is actually a copper water pump compared to the factory one that, I mean, this one isn't quite a good example, but this is actually made out of plastic. So yeah, I usually like to replace them with metal ones because the original water pumps had quite a lot of issues with cracking inside the block, and then they'd, you know, not do their job. Over time they did change the design, and it's actually just metal. I think it's like reinforced metal, but it has like a plastic outside, and they didn't have as much issues. So anyways, we'll throw this on. I typically like to throw a bit of lube around the seal so then it just goes in nicely and doesn't pinch, or just put some coolant or water around it and just snug it on. So let's go ahead and throw this on. So just wet up the seal and then just evenly push it on, line up our holes. Actually, we need to clean off these bolts because there's quite a lot of sealant on these boys. So I'll just get a wire brush and clean them off. All right, 10 mils going back in, and we'll make sure we torque these up to, I think there's like 10 or 15 Newton meters. So 15 Newton meters for the water pump, like that. And then we'll do this one as well. There we go. And then this one. There we go. Torque down. And now we'll do our tensioner, bruv. All right, new timing belt going on. So just wrap this around. Now, I generally like to put the markings on the timing belt at the top. And before we wrap it around, I like to put a zip tie on it so it doesn't move. So we'll just throw a zip tie on here. There we go, there's one, and then I'll put one on here as well. There's number 2. Zip tie's holding it down now, so then it doesn't move about when I'm wrapping it around. Alrighty, so we got that, and then we'll put our tensioner on like this. There's like this little slit here, and it sort of sits inside behind this. You sort of just sit up against that, and then that way, when we put the bolts on, it's going to sit perfectly. see how this way goes. Sometimes you want to put this tensioner on, or you put the roller on first. But and now we got our new roller. Now there's a little washer, it should already be on there, but don't forget about that. It needs to actually go on. So we'll see how this goes, I guess. There we go. Push it on, and then we'll wrap it around the water pump now. What we can do is we can take this roller off, and then that will give us a bit more room to sort of squeeze this over. All right, I'm gonna take this off. I'll move it out of the way for a second. And then that way we have some more room to throw this on. Oh, did you see that? Now, we're just gonna quickly double check, because I did move this crank around quite a lot doing that. So we got the timing belt on at least, and we're just gonna double check our markings real quick, because I have a feeling they're not gonna line up. But I have a good feeling I've moved the crank around too much. So let's see if our markings line up, hey? If they line up, it's a miracle, and they don't. Who would have thought? Alrighty, so I've just lined up my markings again, but because each time I've tried doing it on the crank, whenever I go to put everything back on again, the crank ends up moving forward. So what I'm doing now is, what I did is I sort of clocked the crank a little bit further back, so then when I put everything back together, it'll probably pull this forward and line everything back up again. So we'll see how this goes, I guess. All right, put the crank back on. There we go, just kick it forward so my markings line up like that. We got our markings here in line, and that's in line. That's about as close as you're really going to get this. They're not going to be exactly perfect, but we'll rotate the motor twice. That's a full turnover, because this will move twice to spin this once. So we'll rotate the motor and see if everything lines back up again, and then we can pull the pin on our tensioner, and that's timed. There's that one and that one. Back up again to our markings, and there we go. It's lined back up on top, and down here we can now pull this pin, and there we go, our motor's timed. Okay, so now that we have completed all the timing on this side, we're going to go ahead and remove the turbo. It is just all really Allen key bolts by the looks of it, including all the turbo bracket and all the oil lines. So we're going to go ahead and take all those lines off, and then this turbo should just come straight off, and that way we have pretty much a straight block that we can clean up and then throw everything back onto. So we're going to start with this larger oil feed line, which is a H8 size. Now I did put some nut buster, as we like to call it here on the channel. You know, often it's just a penetrating oil. It's just an inside joke that Harley and I have. But yeah, got that. Just so I know that there's supposed to be a banjo bolt there later, I'm actually just going to put this bolt back in. Okay, we're going to take this feed line off the top. This is a coolant line that goes to the top of the turbo. Okay, so another bolt on top of the turbo. This is the oil feed line. Same size as that coolant line was, but can't round this one off. Come on, what is this? There we go. Alrighty, we're gonna just remove this bolt here as well, because this is stopping us from getting to the oil feed line bolt there, and I'd really like to not strip any bolts today, so, or any more bolts at least, but that just allows us to be able to move about a bit more we might just be able to squeeze this longer one just past it. So we'll try this out. Really hoping we don't strip this one, but it's only quite a small bolt. There we go, we got it. Sort of see it moving back there, but it's disconnected now, so we don't have to worry about that. It should still allow us to take the turbo off. Okay, so next step, we're going to go ahead and remove this oil feed line. It's just two 10mm bolts, and then we can remove that line off the sump. There we go. Now we just need to remove the bracket and this turbo can come off. Okay, just some H6 bolts now. And I think we've almost successfully stripped this motor. I'm pretty excited for this. This is the last thing, the piece of resistance, as you might call it. That's one, and that's two. There we go. Got our turbo off. Not worth using anyways because of all the play. So I think that's it. Now that we have everything out of the way, I want to give this thing a quick clean down. Just got some WD here that I'm just spraying this thing down with. And then I want to go over it with a brush. Okay, well, now that the block is looking nice and clean, I think the last thing I want to do, because I'm going to be replacing this out with an alloy one, I'm going to be taking all of this off and all the coolant lines that go down to the oil cooler and all of this here, just so it's nice and clean and ready to go straight on with all the new parts. I think this has come out really nicely and I'm really happy with the turnout of this engine. I mean, for 300 bucks, I think we've absolutely scored. Everything is looking nice and healthy and good. We will have to replace out this PCV hose system. It looks like someone's bodged this up a few times, and it's also split here, which wouldn't help the idle at all. But I do have a metal system and I might do a catch can setup anyways. So I want to be deleting all of that. Let's take this piece off and then I think that's about it. Alrighty, I'm just gonna take all these hoses off and then try to take that one off after. That whole monstrosity is off. We actually replaced this on Matea's GTI when he came down. That's in a prior video. I'll actually link it up in the top of the screen. That I actually replaced on my GTI as well. It's a very common hose to go. I was hoping I could salvage this one. It doesn't look like it, so you're really just peeling it off. Really gets a good seal on it. Well, there we have it, guys. The new motor for the GTI is ready, stripped down, timed. We're gonna do a bit more cleaning later on and maybe throw on a new alternator and a couple other fresh things to make this thing look a lot nicer. But the Asian rocker cover on this thing is looking really, really good, and I can't wait to see it in the engine bay of the GTI. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the process as much as I did, and I can't wait to finally show you guys the result of everything in the GTI. So if you want to see that, stick around. Make sure to subscribe down below as well so you don't miss out when I upload, and leave a comment what's your favorite part of this video. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.